New Fable Creative Picture Book, An Arrogant White Goose, A Lesson of Arrogance. There was an arrogant goose who thought itself the greatest animal and treated others like nothing. Do you know what would happen to it? In Four Season Farm, there was a very tall and arrogant white goose. In his eyes, all the other animals were little, and the greatest one in the world was himself. One morning, a bee greeted him by saying, "Mr. Goose, how are you?" The goose lifted up his head, took a look and said, "You must be a mosquito." "No, I am not. I am a bee. I am a dozen times bigger than a mosquito," the bee said. "But in my eyes, you are almost as big as a mosquito," the goose said arrogantly. Being looked down upon in such an early morning, the bee flew away sadly. Later, the white goose swam in a pond. A frog saw him and said politely, "How are you, Mr. Goose?" The goose glanced at the frog, who popped out of the water and asked, "Are you a tadpole?" "No, Mr. Goose, it's not correct. I am a frog, not a tadpole. Tadpole is the name for a baby frog. I am a grown-up, bigger than a tadpole by dozens of times," the frog replied agitatedly. "However, in my eyes, you are still as big as a tadpole," the goose said arrogantly. Once, a striped cat met the white goose in the meadow. He said, "Mr. Goose, how are you?" The goose raised his head, glimpsed at him, and said, "Are you a little mouse?" The cat did not understand how the goose could mistake him for a mouse. He asked in confusion, "Mr. White Goose, are you blind? Can't you tell I am a cat?" The goose arrogantly glanced at the cat and answered, "But I do think you are only as big as a mouse." The cat shook his head with a bitter smile, turned around and left gloomily. A big yellow dog paced over at that time. He wagged his tail and said, "How are you, Mr. White Goose?" As arrogant as before, the goose said to the dog, "Are you a kitty?" "No way, I am a big yellow dog," the dog answered. The white goose stretched up his neck as high as possible and said, "But I think you are just as big as a cat. Let me tell you, in my eyes, nothing else in the world is so-called great." The yellow dog believed Mr. Goose was overproud and arrogant. Mr. White Goose, never puff yourself so much. So many things in the world are much greater than you. For example, a giraffe's neck is longer than yours by a dozen of times, and an elephant's body is several times the size of yours as well, the yellow dog said. The white goose thought the yellow dog lied, so he did not take his words seriously. Right at this moment, a horse rapidly ran toward their direction. The yellow dog dodged away at once and yelled nervously, "Step out of the way! There comes a galloping horse!" The white goose stood still at the same place and said carelessly, "Take it easy. It is nothing but a little lamb." Without finishing his words, the goose had been run over by the speeding horse and died.